Salutations, dear friends. You're listening to Pika Fiction. Today's narrative journey takes us through what if Ash was betrayed by the Traitors and Sabrina the Psychic Queen made him her king. If our stories bring you joy, please consider liking and subscribing. Share with friends who appreciate a good story. And so, our story begins. Chapter 1, The shattering the air on the summit of Silver was thin and tasted of ozone and impending violence. It was a taste Ash Ketchum had come to know as well as the forest floor or the salt spray of the ocean. The wind, a razor-edged thing that scoured the peaks bare, whipped his raven hair across his face and tore at his jacket. It did little to cool the fire in his veins. Opposite him, framed against a bruised purple sky, the beast roared its defiance. It was a Tyranitar, but a mockery of one. Larger than any recorded specimen, its dark green hide was scarred with jagged, crystalline growths that pulsed with a sickly magenta light. Its eyes were not the fierce, intelligent black of its species, but swirling vortexes of mindless rage. This was no wild Pokémon defending its territory, it was a plague, a walking natural disaster that had turned the mountain's entire ecosystem into a charnel house. The Pokémon League had sent 3 elite teams to contain it. None had returned. So they had sent Ash. Pikachu was a yellow bolt of lightning at his feet, cheeks crackling with contained power, his small body a coiled spring of readiness. To Ash's right, Infernape burned with a low, controlled inferno, its fists clenched, while to his left, Lucario stood in a state of meditative calm, its eyes closed, sensing the world not through sight but through the waves of energy that rippled from every living thing. It's losing control, Ash, Lucario's voice echoed in his mind, a calm baritone against the howling wind. The energy inside it, it's tearing it apart. I know, Ash murmured, his own senses confirming it. He could feel the creature's agony, a screeching, chaotic feedback loop of pain and power that grated against his own aura like stone on steel. He extended a hand, palm open, not in aggression, but as a plea. We're not here to hurt you. Let us help. The Tyranitar responded by slamming its tail into the mountainside, shattering a 10-ton boulder into a shotgun blast of granite shrapnel. Infernape moved like a flicker of flame, a blur of motion that punched the largest chunks of rock into dust before they could reach them. Plan B, then, Ash said, his voice dropping the plea and gaining a hard, commanding edge. His friends, his entourage, as the League had called them, watched from a safe distance below, huddled near a reinforced transport shuttle. Brock. Misty. Gary. Max and May. Dawn. They were supposed to be his support. His presence here was at their insistence, a demonstration to the League's more skeptical brass. Show them what you can really do, Gary had said, a rare sincerity in his rival's voice. Show them what a true master is. Ash intended to. Lucario, find the core of the corruption. Infernape, we need to get its attention. Full power. Don't hold back. The command was all they needed. Infernape roared, the flame on its head erupting into a towering column of fire that defied the freezing wind. It charged, fists blazing, a meteor of righteous fury. The corrupted Tyranitar met the charge with a hyper beam, a thick, pulsating spear of destructive energy. Ash didn't flinch. Now, Pikachu. Pikachu shot forward, not at the Tyranitar, but to the side, a tiny yellow missile that ran along the arc of the hyper beam's path. The ambient energy supercharged him, his body glowing with power he could barely contain. The chest, Lucario projected, its eyes snapping open, crimson irises locked on the Tyranitar. There's a knot of that foul energy right over its heart. Ash saw it then, not with his eyes, but with his aura. A tangled, cancerous mass of violet and black energy, writhing like a nest of serpents beneath the beast's armored hide. That was the source. That was the poison. Infernape's flare blitz crashed into the Tyranitar's shoulder, a concussive explosion of fire that staggered the behemoth. For a split second, its attention was diverted. It was the only opening they would get. Pikachu, pin it. Volt crash. It was a move of their own invention, a reckless, beautiful, and devastatingly effective attack. Pikachu leaped, spinning in the air, gathering every joule of stored energy into a single point. He didn't fire a thunderbolt. He became one. He slammed into the Tyranidar's chest, directly over the spot Lucario had identified. But instead of a simple explosion, the electricity discharged inwards, a targeted surge designed to shock and paralyze the core of the corruption. The Tyranitar screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony, and swatted Pikachu from its chest. Ash's partner hit the ground in a crumpled heap, sparks sputtering weakly from his body. Ash's heart clenched, but there was no time for panic. The Volt Crash had worked. The magenta light pulsing from the creature's crystalline growths flickered and dimmed. Its rage was momentarily broken, replaced by confused pain. This was his chance. He broke into a dead sprint, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. The air around him began to shimmer, a visible distortion as his own power began to manifest. It was no longer the subtle, intuitive sense it had been in his youth. It was a tangible force, a wellspring of golden light that resided in his very soul. "Stay back." Brock's voice shouted, thin and panicked against the wind. "Ash, that's enough. You've weakened it. Let the enforcers handle it now." But Ash didn't hear him. He was in the zone, a state of perfect symbiosis with his Pokémon and his own power. He could feel Lucario's focus, Infernape's burning loyalty, and Pikachu's fading but determined spark. He could also feel the Tyranitar's suffering, and beneath it, a faint, terrified consciousness, a prisoner in its own body. He slid to a halt directly in front of the dazed giant. It loomed over him, a mountain of corrupted flesh, its hot, foul breath washing over him. Its eyes, no longer pure rage, now held a flicker of fear. "It's okay," Ash said, his voice calm and steady. He raised both hands, and they began to glow, not with a faint shimmer, but with a brilliant, blinding golden luminescence. The light wasn't hot, it felt like the first sun of spring, a pure, clean warmth in the biting cold of the summit. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to set you free." The golden aura flowed from his palms, not as a projectile, but as a wave. It washed over the Tyranitar's legs, its torso, its chest. Where the light touched, the sickly magenta glow receded like darkness before the dawn. The crystalline growths began to hiss and dissolve into black dust. The Tyranitar shuddered, a low groan rumbling in its chest, but it didn't attack. It was as if the creature, deep down, recognized the purity of the force washing over it. This was the true potential of aura, the secret the ancient guardians knew. It wasn't just for battle or empathy. It was a force of creation, of order, of life itself. It could mend what was broken, purify what was tainted. He focused the flow, pushing it towards the core in the beast's chest. The dark energy fought back, a silent, psychic scream of defiance that echoed in Ash's mind. It felt alien, wrong. A void that hated the light. He poured more of himself into the attack, his own life force fueling the golden tide. The world around him faded to a pinpoint. There was only him, the light, and the darkness he was fighting. With a final, desperate push, his aura pierced the core. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then, a shockwave of pure, untainted energy erupted from the Tyranitar. It was not destructive. It was a cleansing pulse. The last of the crystals on its body shattered into harmless powder. The magenta light was gone. The creature's eyes cleared, the swirling vortexes replaced by the intelligent, confused gaze of a normal Pokémon. It blinked, swayed on its feet, and then collapsed onto the ground, not dead, but deeply, deeply unconscious, its breathing slow and steady. Purified. Ash fell to his knees, his body screaming in protest. The golden light faded from his hands, leaving them trembling. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the freezing temperature. He had poured almost everything he had into that single act. He was exhausted, but a fierce, triumphant smile split his face. He'd done it. He had saved it. He looked up, expecting to see looks of awe, of celebration. He looked towards his friends. And his world broke. They weren't smiling. Their faces were pale, their expressions a mixture of horror and a chilling, resolute fear. Misty's hand was clamped over her mouth. Brock's fists were clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. Gary's usual smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of grim determination. Behind them, a dozen Pokémon League enforcers in their stark gray uniforms had fanned out, their hands resting on the containment devices at their belts. They weren't looking at the Tyranitar. They were all looking at him. What was that? Misty's voice was a whisper, but it carried on the now quiet wind with the force of a physical blow. Ash pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly. I told you. I purified it. The aura, it can heal. That wasn't healing, Brock said, his voice low and heavy with a conviction that terrified Ash. That was an abomination. You forced your own energy into it. You overrode it. It's not natural, Ash. Ash stared at him, his triumphant smile faltering. Brock. What are you talking about? We won. The mountain is safe. The mountain is safe, Gary agreed, stepping forward. He gestured to the unconscious Tyranitar. But is the world? Look at what you did, Ash. The raw power you just wielded, it's beyond what any human or Pokémon should possess. It's a cancer. A beautiful, golden cancer, but a cancer nonetheless. The words hit Ash like ice water. Cancer. Abomination. He looked from face to face, searching for a flicker of doubt, a hint of a joke. He found none. He saw only the cold, hard certainty of zealots. You're scared, Ash said, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. That's all this is. You saw something you didn't understand, and it scared you. Of course we're scared. Misty cried, her voice rising in pitch. We're your friends, Ash. We've been watching you, seeing this thing inside you grow. We've been consulting with experts, with Professor Oak, with everyone. They all agree. The aura you possess is not the gentle empathy of the old legends. It's a mutation. An unstable, world-breaking power. We're here to save you from yourself. The enforcers began to advance, their movements slow, deliberate, flanking him. Lucario and Infernape moved to his side, growling, placing themselves between Ash and the approaching threat. Ash's mind was reeling. Professor Oak. Everyone. Save me. Ash's voice was dangerously quiet. Save me from what? By surrounding me with soldiers. It's for your own good, a new voice said. It was one of the League officials, a stern-faced man named Tiberius whom Ash had met in passing. He held up a strange-looking device, a metallic cuff lined with glowing blue circuits. We have developed a way to seal your abilities. To make you normal again. You'll surrender your Pokémon to our care for observation, and you will come with us. The world tilted on its axis. Surrender his Pokémon. Seal his powers. The words were meaningless, insane. He looked at Brock, his oldest friend, the man who had been like a brother to him. Brock. You're letting them do this? Brock wouldn't meet his eyes. We have to. Before you lose control completely. Before you become the monster they fear you are. The monster they fear. Ash's voice cracked. He gestured at the enforcers. Or the monster you fear I am. That hit its mark. Brock flinched. But it was Gary who answered, his voice devoid of any warmth. There's no difference anymore, Ash. We've made our choice. Now you have to make yours. Cooperate, and this can be painless. Resist, and we'll be forced to treat you as what you've become, a threat to global security. The betrayal was a physical thing, a shard of ice driving itself into his heart. These were not his friends. Not anymore. The people he had bled for, fought alongside, shared his dreams with, they were standing there, ready to put him in a cage. And for what? For being strong. For saving a life instead of taking it. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Pikachu was stirring, pushing himself up on shaky paws. He saw the enforcers, saw the cold looks on the faces of their friends, and a low, dangerous growl rumbled in his chest. Pikachu, Ash whispered. He took a half-step back, a primal, instinctual retreat. The movement was all the enforcers needed. He's resisting. Subdue him. Tiberius commanded. The first shot wasn't a bullet. It was a beam of coherent energy from a capture stylus, designed to incapacitate a Pokémon. But it wasn't aimed at Infernape or Lucario. It was aimed at Ash. Lucario moved faster than sight, intercepting the beam with a hastily formed aura sphere that dissipated the energy in a shower of sparks. But it was a declaration of war. "You're fools," Ash snarled, the hurt in his voice now being rapidly consumed by a blazing, righteous fury. The exhaustion he felt vanished, burned away by adrenaline. "All of you. Don't you see? This is what we're talking about." Misty screamed, pointing a trembling finger. "Violence is your only answer. You're the ones who brought an army to a conversation." Ash roared back. "Infernape, fire spin. Create a wall. Lucario, with me. We're getting Pikachu and we're leaving." Infernape slammed its fists into the ground, and a vortex of fire erupted, a swirling barrier between them and the enforcers. But they were prepared. "Blastoise, go. Hydro Cannon." Gary shouted, hurling a Pokeball. The massive turtle Pokémon materialized, its cannons already glowing. A torrent of high-pressure water smashed into the fire spin, turning it into a cloud of thick, blinding steam. "Steelix. Bind them." Brock yelled, and his own colossal Pokémon burst from its ball, diving into the ground. Ash scooped up the weakened Pikachu, cradling his partner in one arm. "Lucario, where?" "They've surrounded the shuttle. There is no escape route," Lucario projected, its voice grim. It deflected another stun beam with a bone-hardened arm. The ground beneath them trembled, and the metallic head of Brock Steelix erupted from the snow, its maw gaping, trying to encircle them. "Infernape, Mach Punch." Ash commanded. Infernape, wreathed in steam, shot through the mist and delivered a blindingly fast punch to the side of Steelix's head. The blow, empowered by Blaze, rang out like a bell the size of a mountain. The steel serpent recoiled in pain, but it had done its job. The seconds it had bought were enough. The steam cleared. They were surrounded. Misty's Gyarados was a coiled leviathan of muscle and rage. Gary's Blastoise had its cannons aimed squarely at them. The Enforcer's own powerful Pokémon, Metagross, Salamence, Rhyperior, formed an iron ring. "It's over, Ash," Gary said, his voice flat. "We didn't want it to come to this." "Liar," Ash spat, his eyes burning. He looked at them, at the faces he once trusted, and saw only strangers. Strangers who had planned this. Who had lured him here under the pretense of support, only to spring this trap. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was staggering. He clutched Pikachu tighter. His friend was trembling, not from fear, but from a building charge. He was ready to fight to the last. They all were. But Ash looked at the odds. They were exhausted. Pikachu was injured. They were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. But he would not let them take his family. "Lucario," Ash whispered, his voice hoarse. "Infernape. I'm sorry." He shifted his grip on Pikachu, preparing for a final, desperate breakout. He would aim for the weakest point in their line, cause as much chaos as possible, and hope to God he could find cover in the labyrinthine caves of the mountain. And then Misty gave the order that shattered the last vestiges of the boy he used to be. "Starmie," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. Use psychic on Pikachu. Restrain him. A wave of telekinetic force, shimmering and purple, shot towards him. It wasn't aimed at Ash, but at the small, injured creature in his arms. The one he had sworn to always protect. To use a psychic attack on an already weakened electric type, it was needlessly cruel. It was a pressure point. A deliberate, tactical strike against his heart. In that instant, something inside Ash broke. The grief, the betrayal, the rage, it all coalesced into a single, incandescent point of clarity. He moved. He didn't order an attack. He didn't try to dodge. He simply spun, putting his own body between the psychic wave and Pikachu. The telekinetic force slammed into his back. It wasn't a physical blow, but it felt like one. It felt like 1,000 needles of ice stabbing into his mind, his nerves, his very spirit. He cried out, a raw, agonized sound, and stumbled forward, his vision swimming. Pikachu shrieked, a sound of pure fury, and a thunderbolt of unprecedented power erupted from his small body, aimed not at Starmie, but at Misty herself. No! Ash gasped, fighting the psychic assault. Gary's Blastoise fired a warning shot of water, not at Pikachu, but at the ground in front of him, forcing the electric mouse to leap back. See! Tiberius shouted triumphantly. The corruption spreads. The creature is as unstable as he is. Full suppression, now. Take them down. The world devolved into chaos. Beams of energy crisscrossed the summit. Infernape roared as it was struck by a combined assault of water and dragon pulses. Lucario, trying to shield Ash, was caught in the crushing grip of a Metagross's psychic. Ash, still reeling, could only watch as his family, his partners, were being systematically brutalized. They weren't trying to capture them. They were trying to break them. He sank to one knee, the psychic energy still racking his body. He held Pikachu close, shielding him with his own frame as stray attacks impacted the snow around them. He could feel Lucario's pain, Infernape's fading fire. They were losing. He was losing. A massive shadow fell over him. One of the Enforcer's Rhyperiors stood above him, its arm cannon glowing as it prepared to fire a rock wrecker at point-blank range. This would not be a stun. This would be an execution. Ash closed his eyes. He thought of his mother. He thought of all the Pokémon he had ever met. He thought of the promise he had made as a child, to become the very best. He had failed. His own friends had become his executioners. He clutched Pikachu, waiting for the end. And then, silence. A profound, absolute, and impossible silence. The howling wind died. The roar of the Rhyperior cut off mid-bellow. The crackle of energy ceased. Ash opened his eyes. The world was frozen. The rock wrecker, a half-formed sphere of destructive orange energy, hovered inches from the Rhyperior's cannon. Misty's Gyarados was locked mid-strike, its fangs bared. Gary, Brock, Misty, the Enforcers, all of them were perfectly still, like statues carved from flesh and fabric, their faces locked in expressions of aggression and grim certainty. Even the snowflakes hung suspended in the air like dust motes in a sunbeam. The only things that could move were Ash, a whimpering Pikachu, and his two Pokémon, who were now looking around in stunned confusion. A pressure built in the air, a tangible weight that felt like the bottom of the deepest ocean. It was a power unlike anything Ash had ever felt. It was not the elemental fury of a legendary bird, nor the terrestrial might of a Groudon. It was a power of the mind, vast and cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. And it was directed at him. He looked up, following the source of the pressure. Standing on a rock outcropping 20 feet away, a place that had been empty a second before, was a woman. She wore a sleek, form-fitting crimson jumpsuit, and her long, raven-black hair flowed behind her, defying the frozen stillness of the air. Her face was a mask of cold, regal beauty, and her eyes glowed with an unnerving fuchsia light. It was Sabrina, the psychic queen of Saffron City. She held one hand outstretched, a single, elegant finger pointed towards the battlefield. It was clear that she was the source of this temporal stasis. The sheer, casual display of power was terrifying. She was holding 24 high-level trainers and their champion-caliber Pokémon in a complete temporal lock with a single gesture. Her glowing eyes swept over the scene, the defeated Infernape, the struggling Lucario, the terrified look on Ash's face, and the small, injured mouse Pokémon he was protecting. Her gaze lingered on the frozen forms of his friends. A flicker of something that might have been contempt crossed her features. Her voice, when it came, was not a shout. It was a calm, clear telepathic message that resonated directly in the minds of Ash and his conscious Pokémon. It was a voice that cut through the silence like a shard of glass. "They hunt you for the power you possess, Aura Guardian," she said, her mental voice cool and precise. She took a step forward, her boots making no sound on the frozen ground. "They fear what they cannot understand and seek to destroy what they cannot control. The eternal story of the gifted and the mundane." She stopped just before the edge of the frozen chaos and looked directly at Ash. Her fuchsia eyes seemed to see right through him, into the core of his shattered spirit and the depths of his power. "You fought to save a life," she continued, her gaze flicking to the slumbering Tyranitar. "And they condemn you for it. You showed them mercy, and they offered you a cage." Her eyes then moved to the frozen visages of Misty, Brock, and Gary. The pressure in the air intensified, and a low hum vibrated through the mountaintop. "You mistook a guardian for a monster." Sabrina's voice was a blade of ice, each word a separate, distinct cut. "A fatal error." She raised her other hand. A sphere of swirling purple energy, shot through with black lightning, formed in her palm. It radiated a power that made Ash's soul ache. He knew, with absolute certainty, that if she unleashed it, the frozen figures would not just be defeated. They would be unmade. "Wait," Ash rasped, his voice raw. The word was a puff of steam in the cold air. Sabrina paused, her glowing eyes fixing on him. The sphere of destructive energy did not dissipate. "They were my friends," he whispered, the words tasting like ash and bile. Sabrina's expression did not change. "They ceased to be your friends the moment they decided your power was a crime. Friendship does not put a leash on the object of its affection." She held his gaze for a long moment. Ash didn't know what she saw there, the pain, the betrayal, the lingering, stupid hope that this was all a nightmare. But something in his expression must have resonated with her. The sphere of dark psychic energy in her hand slowly, reluctantly, dissolved into nothing. "Pity," she stated, as if commenting on the weather. "It would have been a service." She lowered her hand and turned her full attention to him. "You cannot stay here. They will not stop. Their fear has been stoked into a fire, and it will burn until you are ashes or in chains. This mountain is your tomb, whether you die here today or are captured and brought to theirs." She offered him a choice, not with a question, but with a statement of fact. "Their world has no place for you. So I will offer you mine." Without waiting for a reply, she made a small, deliberate gesture. A shimmering purple portal, a tear in the fabric of reality, opened beside her. On the other side, Ash could see not the cold slopes of Silver, but a warm, sunlit room with a panoramic view of a sprawling metropolis. Sabrina glanced at Lucario and Infernape. With a flick of her wrist, 2 beams of gentle psychic energy flowed from her, wrapping around them. They were not attacks. The energy soothed their injuries, eased their pain, and then, in a swirl of light, they were converted into the familiar red energy of a pokeball and returned to the clips on Ash's belt. She then looked at the unconscious Tyranitar. For a moment, Ash thought she would leave it, but another pulse of her power caused the massive creature to vanish in a flash of light, transported to a safe location known only to her. Finally, her gaze settled back on him and the precious bundle in his arms. "Come, King of Aura," she said, her voice laced with a strange, unreadable tone that was not quite mocking, not quite sincere. Your throne awaits. Ash looked from the portal to the frozen tableau of his past. The faces of his friends, twisted into masks of righteous fury. The weapons aimed at his heart. The life he had known was over. It had been murdered on this mountaintop. He took a deep breath, the cold air a final, painful reminder of what he was leaving behind. He clutched Pikachu, pushed his battered body to its feet, and without a single look back, he walked through the portal. The moment he crossed the threshold, the world behind him snapped back into motion. The rock wrecker fired, blasting a crater in the spot where he had been kneeling. The wind howled again. The sounds of battle returned for a split second before cutting off into shouts of confusion. Where did he go? He's gone. What was that pressure? Misty, Brock, and Gary stared at the empty space, their faces a canvas of shock and dawning horror. They had not captured their monster. They had lost him. And in doing so, they had unleashed something far more dangerous than they could ever have imagined. They had created an enemy. On the silent, frozen peak of Silver, they were left alone with their betrayal, under the cold, uncaring eyes of the sky. Ash Ketchum was gone. And in the heart of Saffron City, a king had just arrived. Chapter 2, The Queen's Gambit. Ash awoke to silence. It was a thick, unnatural silence that felt heavier than any sound. The howling gales of Silver were gone, replaced by a stillness so profound it pressed in on his ears. He lay on his back, staring up at a ceiling that was a masterpiece of polished, dark wood inlaid with geometric patterns of silver. The air was warm and smelled faintly of lavender and old books. He was lying in a bed large enough for 10 people, swathed in silk sheets that felt like cool water against his skin. For a disoriented moment, he thought he was dead. This opulent tomb was a far cry from the violent, frozen end he had anticipated. Then, a familiar weight settled on his chest, and a soft, worried coo reached his ears. Pika. Ash turned his head. Pikachu was curled up beside him, his fur clean, the scorch marks from the battle gone. His red cheeks were dim, his ears drooped. He looked exhausted, but he was watching Ash with an intensity that anchored him to reality. Hey, buddy, Ash whispered, his voice a dry rasp. He tried to sit up and a network of aches, deep and foundational, flared to life through his torso and back. It was the ghost of Misty's psychic attack, a phantom pain that was more memory than injury. He winced, falling back against a mountain of pillows. He was alive. He was, somewhere. And the last thing he remembered was a pair of glowing fuchsia eyes and a voice that sounded like breaking crystal. The door to the room slid open with a near-silent hiss. Ash's hand instinctively went to his belt, but it wasn't there. His jacket, tattered and scorched, was gone. He was wearing a simple, soft black shirt and trousers. He was defenseless. Sabrina stepped into the room. In the soft light of the suite, she seemed less a supernatural entity and more a woman of severe, intimidating grace. The crimson jumpsuit had been replaced by a long, elegant black dress that did nothing to soften her regal bearing. Her long hair was tied back, and her eyes, no longer glowing, were a deep, startling violet. Behind her, a sleek alakazam floated with its spoons crossed, its own psychic presence a low, constant hum in the background. She did not approach the bed. She stopped in the center of the room, her posture immaculate, her hands clasped behind her back. She surveyed him not with the concern of a nurse, but with the critical eye of an artisan examining a piece of rare, damaged material. Your physical injuries were trivial, she said, her voice as clear and devoid of inflection as it had been in his mind. A few burns, severe exhaustion, minor neurological strain from the telekinetic assault. All easily repaired. Pikachu, as well. Ash's eyes narrowed. Where are my Pokémon? On the terrace, she answered without hesitation. They have been fed and attended to. They are unharmed. She paused, her gaze unwavering. Their physical wounds, at least. The implication hung in the air. Ash said nothing, just stared at her, a cold knot of defiance forming in his gut. This woman had saved him, but he was her prisoner all the same. A gilded cage was still a cage. "Where are we?" he asked, the question sharp. "My home. The penthouse of what was once the Sylph Corporation headquarters. Now, it is the heart of Saffron City." Why? It was the only question that mattered. Why save him? Why bring him here? Sabrina's expression remained unreadable, but a flicker of something, impatience, perhaps, crossed her features. "Because I have been watching you for a very long time, Ash Ketchum. I watched a boy with a stubborn Pikachu challenge my gym and win through sheer, infuriating ingenuity. I watched him calm legendaries, befriend gods, and walk through the distortion world. And I watched him slowly, clumsily, begin to touch the power that has slept in his bloodline for 1,000 years." She took a step closer, her violet eyes boring into him. "The aura. Most who possess a fraction of your gift can do little more than sense emotions or form a shallow bond with their Pokémon. You purified a creature corrupted by a force beyond this world. You did it instinctively, powerfully. You are the first true aura guardian to walk this planet in centuries. And that's why my friends tried to kill me," Ash spat, the words dripping with a venom that surprised even himself. "Precisely," Sabrina agreed, a hint of something that might have been approval in her tone. "Power like yours is a singularity. It warps the world around it. It frightens those who live in the flat, predictable plane of normality. Your friends are not evil, Ash. They are merely common. They saw a godling in their midst, and their fear, their very human terror of the unknown, turned them into inquisitors. They would rather see you broken and normal, than accept that you have outgrown them." She let the words sink in, a brutal, surgical diagnosis of his heartbreak. She wasn't comforting him. She was arming him with the truth, sharpening his pain into a weapon. "I did not save you out of pity," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "I saved you because you are a resource too valuable to be destroyed by the ignorant. I offer you a choice, a gambit. You can take it or leave it. The outcome to me is merely one of opportunity cost." She began to pace slowly, her movements fluid and deliberate. "Choice 1, you leave. I will teleport you to any remote corner of the world you desire. You can live out your days in obscurity, a hermit with a powerful secret, forever looking over your shoulder. The League will hunt you. Your former friends, driven by their righteous crusade, will never stop. You will live a life of fear and regret, a ghost haunted by what you could have been." Pikachu chirped angrily at the suggestion, pressing closer to Ash's side. "Or," Sabrina continued, stopping to face him again, "there is choice 2. You stay. You stand with me. You accept what you are, not a monster, but a power. A leader. This city, Saffron, is my fortress. My psychic abilities have kept it autonomous and safe for years. But I am one person. My reach is absolute, but it is finite." She gestured to the vast, panoramic window that took up an entire wall of the suite. Beyond it, the sprawling urban landscape of Saffron City glittered under the afternoon sun. "Together, we can make this city more than a fortress. We can make it a sanctuary. A place where power is not feared, but cultivated. A kingdom for the outcasts, the gifted, the strong who have been marginalized by the League's rigid, suffocating order. I am its mind and its shield. You would be its heart and its sword." The sheer audacity of the proposal left Ash breathless. A kingdom. He, a king. It was insane. He was a Pokémon trainer from Pallet Town. "You want me to be your weapon," he said flatly. Sabrina's lips curved in a faint, humorless smile. "Do not be so reductive. A king is not a weapon, he is the hand that wields it. I am offering you a crown, Ash Ketchum, not a leash. Your friends offered you a leash. Remember that." She turned and walked back towards the door. "The choice is yours. I will not force you. But the world is already choosing for you. The League will not let my defiance on Silver go unanswered. They will come for you. And when they will come for Saffron. You have until then to decide if you will be this city's protector, or its liability. The door hissed open. Rest, she said, her back to him. Your grief is a poison. Let it run its course. But do not let it drown you. The door slid shut, leaving Ash and Pikachu alone in the deafening silence of the palatial room. The offer hung in the air, ludicrous and terrifying and, to a part of him he didn't want to acknowledge, intoxicating. A kingdom. A crown. Or a life on the run. He closed his eyes, and all he could see were the faces of his friends as they condemned him. The next 3 days passed in a blur of grey misery. Ash did not leave the suite. A silent, efficient Mr. Mime brought trays of food, which he ignored. It brought fresh clothes, which he didn't change into. He spent hours on the terrace, a vast, open space high above the city, where Lucario and Infernape paced restlessly. They could feel his turmoil. Infernape's head flame burned low and sullen, a reflection of the cold anger simmering in Ash's gut. Lucario was a statue of troubled stillness, its mental voice a constant, gentle pressure against the walls of Ash's mind, not speaking, but simply present, a silent offer of support. Ash leaned on the railing, the wind whipping his hair, and stared down at the city. It was a living, breathing entity. Flying taxis zipped between skyscrapers, people thronged the streets like colorful rivers, and in the parks, trainers and their Pokémon played and battled. It was a city at peace, protected and isolated by the psychic bubble of its queen. A queen who now wanted a king. He replayed the betrayal over and over, a masochistic ritual of torment. Every detail was seared into his memory. Brock's averted eyes. Brock, who had been his rock, his mentor in all things practical, who had patched up his scrapes and taught him how to cook. The sheer hypocrisy of the man who followed his own dreams of being a breeder to stand in judgment of Ash's own nature was a bitter pill to swallow. Misty's shaking voice. Misty, his first traveling companion, his fiercest critic and most loyal supporter. He remembered their arguments, their laughter, the bond forged over near-death experiences and shared victories. And he remembered her command, use Psychic on Pikachu. It was a line that could never be uncrossed, a tactical cruelty that had revealed a stranger behind the face of his friend. And Gary. Cool, confident Gary. The rival who had pushed him, mocked him, and finally, respected him. His betrayal was perhaps the most cutting, because it wasn't emotional. It was a cold, logical conclusion. There's no difference anymore, Ash. He had been weighed, measured, and found wanting. Found dangerous. He clenched his fists, his knuckles white. His aura flared, a brief, uncontrolled flicker of gold that caused the metal railing to groan and deform slightly under his grip. He snatched his hands back, staring at the warped steel. Sabrina was right. The power was a part of him. He couldn't turn it off any more than he could stop his own heart. They were asking him to perform a voluntary amputation of his soul. Pikachu nudged his hand, offering a small, dried berry he'd found in one of the terrace's planters. Ash looked down at his partner, at the unwavering trust in those black eyes, and the dam of his anger finally broke, replaced by a wave of profound, soul-crushing grief. He sank to the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. Pikachu climbed into his lap, nuzzling against his cheek. They had been his family. For more than a decade of his life, they had been the fixed points in his wandering world. And they had taken that world and deliberately, methodically, shattered it. For his own good. The paternalistic arrogance of it was almost as painful as the act itself. He didn't cry. The pain was too deep for tears. It was a hollow space in his chest where his trust used to be. He stayed like that for hours, a silent vigil for a past that was now dead to him. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. The city lights began to twinkle on, a galaxy of human ambition spread out below him. A soft footstep made him look up. Sabrina was standing there, a few feet away. She held 2 steaming mugs in her hands. She didn't say a word, just walked over and sat down on the cold floor of the terrace, a respectable distance from him. She placed one mug down between them and held her own in her slender hands. The steam carried the scent of cocoa. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the sky darken. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city and Pikachu's soft breathing. "When I was 7, Sabrina said, her voice quiet, almost conversational, my powers fully manifested. I was playing with my dolls. I wanted one to be the queen and the others to be her subjects. When they didn't bow correctly, I became frustrated." She took a sip of her cocoa. "I broke my father's arm from 2 rooms away. He was reaching for a book on a high shelf. My frustration, my will, lashed out and snapped the bone. He screamed. I had never heard him scream like that." Ash remained silent, but he was listening. "He never touched me again," Sabrina continued, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "My mother began leaving my food outside my bedroom door. They looked at me with the same expression your friends had on that mountain. Fear. Revulsion. They spoke to doctors, psychics, anyone who would listen. They wanted to cure me. To make their daughter normal again." She looked at Ash then, her violet eyes holding a profound, ancient loneliness that resonated with the hollow space in his own chest. "I learned a valuable lesson that day, Ash. Exceptionalism is a profound and terrible solitude. To be powerful is to be alone. You can either be crushed by that solitude, or you can build walls to keep the frightened masses out. This city, this is my wall. I built it so I would never again have to see that look on the face of someone I loved." She gestured to the mug of cocoa. "I did not give them the satisfaction of breaking me. I gave them no choice but to leave me be. I became a queen because the world refused to let me be a daughter." In her story, Ash heard the echo of his own. The fear, the rejection, the branding of his very nature as a flaw. He looked at this powerful, cold woman, and for the first time, he saw not a queen or a psychic, but a kindred spirit. Someone who understood the unique agony of being feared for what you are. He reached out and picked up the mug. The warmth spread through his cold fingers. He took a sip. It was rich and slightly bitter. "They were my family," he said, the words feeling thin and inadequate. "And you were their pet prodigy," Sabrina countered, not unkindly. "Until your tricks became miracles. And miracles, to the common man, are terrifying." She stood up, brushing off her dress. "The League has made its move. An ultimatum was delivered an hour ago. Surrender the Aura fugitive Ash Ketchum, or Saffron City will be placed under martial law by a full task force. They arrive at dawn." Ash's head snapped up. Dawn. It was already night. "They're willing to lay siege to a whole city, for me?" he asked, a fresh wave of sickness washing over him. "They are not coming for you, Ash," Sabrina corrected him, her voice regaining its sharp, analytical edge. "They are coming for what you represent, a power outside their control. They are coming to make an example of Saffron, to prove that no one, no matter how powerful, can defy their order. Their fear of you has been stoked into paranoia. Their reaction is disproportionate, fanatical. There is more at play here than simple politics." She looked down at him, her face cast in shadow against the glittering city lights. "Your period of mourning is over, Ash. A choice must be made. When their ships darken the sky, will you be the reason this city falls, or will you be the reason it stands?" She left him there with the ultimatum and the rapidly cooling mug of cocoa. The city below seemed to hold its breath. He was no longer just a broken boy mourning his past. He was a strategic asset. A symbol. A spark that could ignite a war. The hollow space in his chest began to fill with something new. Not grief, not rage. It was a cold, hard resolve. They had hunted him. They had tried to break him. And now, they were threatening thousands of innocent lives to finish the job. They had pushed him, and pushed him, and pushed him. They wanted a monster. They had gone to extraordinary lengths to create one. But he wouldn't be their monster. He would be Sabrina's. He would be Saffron's. He would be a guardian. He stood up, Pikachu leaping to his shoulder, a silent question in his eyes. Ash looked out at the city, his city, and a fierce, protective fire kindled in his soul. He had made his choice. Dawn broke cold and gray. A heavy mist rolled through the streets of Saffron, but it couldn't obscure the sight in the sky. A fleet of 20 heavy-duty League transport carriers hung in the air just outside the city's recognized airspace. They were military-grade vessels, bristling with energy cannons and launch bays. Below them, on the ground, multiple battalions of League enforcers and their Pokémon were establishing a perimeter, their gray uniforms a stark, grim line against the green of the plains. It was an invasion force. At the main gate of the city, on Route 7, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Saffron's own small but elite security force, trainers handpicked by Sabrina for their loyalty and skill, stood ready. Their Pokémon, powerful psychic types, formidable fighting types, and a few esoteric others, stood with them, their gazes fixed on the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Sabrina stood at the forefront, a figure of impossible calm in the face of an army. Her Alakazam floated at her side, eyes glowing, its mind linked with hers, acting as a psychic amplifier that monitored the entire perimeter. A voice, magnified by speakers, boomed from the lead carrier. It was Tiberius. Sabrina, gym leader of Saffron. By order of the Indigo Pokémon League Conference, you are in violation of international law. You are harboring a Class 1 threat. Surrender Ash Ketchum and submit to League authority, or we will be forced to pacify your city by any means necessary. You have 5 minutes. Sabrina didn't flinch. She simply tilted her head, a small, condescending gesture. Your threats are as empty as your justifications, Tiberius. You speak of law, but you act as tyrants. Her voice, amplified by her own psychic power, carried across the field with perfect clarity, cutting through the hum of the carrier engines. Your time is running out, Sabrina. Is it? She replied, a faint smile playing on her lips. As if on cue, a figure emerged from the city gate behind her. He walked with a steady, unhurried pace, his black hair still damp, his expression a mask of cold fury. He wore the simple black shirt and trousers from the night before, but he moved with an authority that made the clothes seem like a uniform. At his shoulder, a Pikachu crackled with contained lightning, its gaze a mirror of its trainer's wrath. Ash came to a stop beside Sabrina. He didn't look at her. He looked at the army that had come for him. I was hoping I was wrong about you, Ash said, his voice quiet but carrying the same unnatural clarity as Sabrina's. He was speaking to the ships, to the soldiers, but his words were meant for the people who had sent them. I was hoping your fear was just a moment of weakness. That you would see reason. He shook his head, a small, bitter gesture. You threaten an entire city. You bring weapons of war. All to capture one person. You're not peacekeepers. You're bullies. And you're cowards. From the lead ship, Tiberius's voice spat back, you have no right to judge us, creature. You are an anomaly that must be erased. 5 minutes are up. Fire the warning salvo. Disable the gate. From the underbelly of the lead carrier, a dozen cannons swiveled and locked on. They began to glow with brilliant blue energy. The ground trembled as they charged. The Saffron defenders braced themselves, their Pokémon preparing shields. Sabrina glanced at Ash. Are you ready? They left me no choice, he answered, his voice flat and hard as stone. He stepped forward, in front of Sabrina, in front of everyone. He stood alone before the gate, a single man against an army. The world held its breath. Fire. A dozen beams of concentrated, destructive energy, each as thick as a tree trunk, screamed through the air. They converged on a single point, Ash. He didn't move. He didn't call a Pokemon. He simply raised his right hand, palm open towards the oncoming onslaught. And he let his power out. It wasn't the desperate, healing wave he had used on the Tyranitar. This was different. It was controlled. It was focused. It was absolute. A sun-gold light erupted from his palm, not as a beam, but as a seed. The instant it left his hand, it expanded with impossible speed. In the space of a single heartbeat, a massive, semi-translucent dome of pure, golden aura materialized, enveloping the entire front gate and stretching hundreds of feet into the sky. It shimmered with an inner light, intricate patterns of energy flowing across its surface like currents in a golden ocean. The League's salvo, a barrage powerful enough to level a city block, struck the dome. There was no explosion. No concussive blast. No sound at all. The 12 beams of energy simply stopped. They flattened against the golden barrier, their terrifying power dissolving into harmless ripples of light that spread across the dome's surface and faded into nothing. It was like throwing stones into a sun. A collective gasp went through the Saffron defenders. The League forces on the ground stared, their mouths agape. High above, in the command carrier, Tiberius stared at his monitor in disbelief, watching the energy signatures of their attack vanish without a trace. Ash stood at the epicenter of his own power, his hand still raised. The wind created by the dome's formation whipped his hair and clothes around him. He was a figure of incandescent, unassailable power. The golden light of the aura reflected in his eyes, turning them from brown to molten gold. He held the dome for a long, silent 10 seconds, letting the image burn itself into the minds of his enemies. He was showing them. He was showing them all what they had feared, what they had tried to chain. He was showing them that they had failed. Then, with a slow clenching of his fist, the dome did not just vanish. It pulsed. A single, silent, non-lethal shockwave of pure aura energy washed over the battlefield. It didn't destroy. It pacified. The League Pokémon on the front lines shuddered, their aggressive stances slackened, and they sank to the ground, not unconscious, but suddenly unwilling to fight, their battlelust completely erased. The enforcers stumbled back, clutching their heads, a wave of profound, inexplicable calm and sorrow washing over them, momentarily crippling their will to be violent. The cannons on the ship sputtered, their energy systems temporarily and harmlessly overloaded by the wave of pure, orderly energy. The field was silent. The siege was broken before the first real shot had even landed. Ash lowered his hand, the golden light fading from his eyes. He was breathing heavily, the effort of manifesting such a massive, controlled structure taking its toll, but he stood tall. He had not harmed a single person or Pokemon. He had simply, and absolutely, told them, no. He turned his back on the stunned army and faced the awestruck defenders of Saffron. He looked at Sabrina. Her usual mask of cold composure was gone. In its place was a look of profound, undisguised awe. She saw him not as a refugee, not as an asset, but as an equal. A force of nature she had chosen to stand beside. The Gambit, Ash said, his voice resonating with the quiet hum of his own power. I accept. A slow, genuine smile graced Sabrina's lips, a rare and brilliant thing. It transformed her face. Welcome home, she said. My king. Chapter 3, The Dragon and the Guardian. The silence that followed Ash's display was more profound than the one his aura dome had created. It was a silence born of pure, unadulterated shock. On the plains outside Saffron, the League's invasion force was in disarray, their Pokémon pacified and their commanders staring at readouts that made no sense. Within the city, the defenders and citizens who had watched on public monitors were frozen, their fear momentarily replaced by a kind of religious awe. They had braced for a siege, for destruction. Instead, they had witnessed a miracle. Sabrina was the first to move. The brilliant, genuine smile she had given Ash faded back into her usual mask of cool composure, but her eyes, when they met his, held a new and potent light. It was the look of a strategist who has just been handed the most powerful piece on the board. An effective, if theatrical, statement, she murmured, her voice for his ears only. They needed to see, Ash replied, his voice still holding a low vibrational hum from the sheer power he had channeled. He felt drained, but also intensely, frighteningly alive. The cold resolve of the morning had been forged into something harder in the crucible of that moment. They needed to understand that their rules don't apply here anymore. He turned back to face the stalled army. The message had been sent. A war had been averted with a single, decisive action. He had expected a retreat, a sullen withdrawal. He had underestimated their obstinance. From the command carrier, Tiberius's voice boomed again, laced now with a hysterical fury. That was a trick. A psychic illusion. Do not be swayed. Ready the secondary cannons. We will bring this city to its knees. Ash's eyes narrowed. They hadn't learned. They were doubling down. He could feel the ripple of fear and anger from the saffron defenders behind him. They had been spared, and now the threat was renewed. He prepared to raise the shield again, though the effort would cost him dearly. Stand down. The new voice was not amplified by speakers or psychic power, but it cut through the tension with the absolute authority of a physical law. It came from the sky. A shadow passed over the field, vast and swift. From the clouds, a single Pokémon descended. It was a Dragonite, its orange scales gleaming even in the muted morning light. It flew not with the aggressive posture of a warrior, but with the regal bearing of a herald. On its back sat a man with fiery red hair that defied gravity, wearing a high-collared black uniform and a flowing dark cape. Lance. The champion of the Indigo League. The Dragon Master. He didn't join his fleet. He directed his Dragonite to land directly in the center of the field, in the no-man's land between the League's front line and the Saffron City Gate. The ground shook slightly as the powerful dragon touched down. Lance dismounted with practiced ease, his presence instantly commanding the attention of every soldier, trainer, and citizen. He raised a hand toward his own fleet. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of an unassailable command. Tiberius, stand your forces down. Now. Champion, the target, Lance interrupted, his voice like stones grinding together, is standing right there, and you have failed to so much as scratch him. You have embarrassed the League and escalated a containment mission into an act of open warfare against a Kanto city. You are relieved of command. Power down your weapons and await my orders. There was a moment of sputtering protest over the comms, then silence. The ominous blue glow faded from the secondary cannons on the ships. The soldiers on the ground, who had been shakily readying themselves for a second assault, visibly relaxed, their postures shifting from aggression to deference. Lance had taken control of an army with 20 words. He then turned his attention to Saffron City. His gaze swept over the gate, over Sabrina, and finally, it settled on Ash. His expression was not one of hatred or anger. It was one of deep, profound concern, the look a man gives when faced with a beautiful, untamed, and mortally dangerous animal. Ash Ketchum, he called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. You have become something more than we anticipated. Ash felt Sabrina's mind brush against his. Be careful. This is not a brute like Tiberius. This is the heart of their power. I'm the same person I've always been, Lance, Ash called back, his voice hard. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time. Lance's lips thinned. What I see is a power capable of neutralizing a League task force single-handedly. A power wielded without oversight, without accountability. The world cannot abide such an unknown. It is a recipe for catastrophe. The only catastrophe here was the one you were about to start. Ash shot back, gesturing to the fleet. Is this the League's idea of oversight? An army sent to beat a city into submission? A regrettable necessity, brought on by your refusal to cooperate, Lance countered, his tone unshakable. He began to walk forward, alone, his cape billowing behind him. He stopped 100 feet from the gate. But I am not here to trade justifications. I am here to end this. A war between the Indigo League and Saffron City would be a tragedy, tearing Kanto apart and destabilizing the entire region. I will not allow it. Then leave, Sabrina stated, her voice cool and sharp. Withdraw your forces. Recognize our sovereignty. It's that simple. Lance gave a short, humorless laugh. It is anything but simple, Sabrina. We cannot leave a rogue state with a weapon of unknown potential at its heart. It is my duty as champion to protect the balance of this world. Ash represents a fundamental disruption to that balance. He looked back at Ash, his gaze intense. I cannot allow you to remain a free agent. The impasse was absolute. The air crackled with unspoken threats. The peaceful resolution Ash had forced was fracturing against the champion's iron will. So what's your solution, Lance? Ash challenged. You can't beat my shield with those ships. Are you going to have your Dragonite try to brute force its way through? Are you going to sacrifice your own Pokémon against a power you just admitted you don't understand? No, Lance said calmly. I am going to do this the way it should have been done from the start. Not with armies and threats. But with a battle. He raised his voice so all could hear. I, Lance, champion of the Indigo League, hereby issue a formal challenge. A full 6-on-6 Pokémon battle. Me, versus you, Ash Ketchum. The battle will be broadcast globally, with the Elder Council of the League acting as remote adjudicators. He paused, letting the weight of his declaration settle. Here are the terms. If I am victorious, you will surrender yourself to my custody. You will come with me to the League headquarters, where your powers will be studied and, if deemed necessary, contained. Saffron City will be placed under temporary League administration until we are certain it harbors no further threats. The Saffron defenders bristled, their murmurs a low growl of protest. And if I win? Ash asked, his heart beginning to pound. If you win, Lance said, and the word seemed to cost him a great deal, the Indigo League will officially recognize the sovereignty of Saffron City. We will withdraw all forces and sign a non-aggression pact, effective immediately. You and your kingdom will be left in peace. We will cede this territory to your rule. It was an incredible wager. Everything they wanted, balanced against everything they feared. Freedom versus subjugation. A kingdom won or lost in a single battle. Sabrina's mental voice was a sharp spike in his mind. He's cornered us. If we refuse, we look like cowards who are afraid to back up our power with skill. We lose the moral high ground. If we accept and you lose, it's over. He's a master strategist. This is his game. Ash knew she was right. But he also knew something she didn't. He had faced Lance before, years ago. He had lost then. He was not the same trainer. He was not the same person. And he was tired of being hunted. He was tired of reacting. It was time to take control of his own destiny. One more condition, Ash said, his voice ringing with newfound confidence. Lance raised an eyebrow. Name it. The battle happens now. Right here. Before the eyes of your army and my city. A slow smile touched Lance's lips. It was a smile of respect. A warrior's smile. Agreed. Let the world bear witness. He turned and gestured. The League forces on the ground began to pull back, forming a massive circle. The transport ships overhead repositioned themselves, their ventral cameras focusing on the impromptu battlefield. In Saffron, every screen, every public monitor, every phone was now locked onto the live feed. The fate of a city was about to be decided by a trial by combat, a tradition as old as the world itself. Sabrina stepped up beside Ash. His dragons are legendary. His strategy is flawless. He has been champion for a decade for a reason. I know, Ash said, pulling his belt from a pouch where the Mr. Mime had placed it and clipping it on. He touched the 6 poke balls at his side. He could feel the energy of his partners inside, a thrum of anticipation, of loyalty, of absolute trust. He closed his eyes for a moment, extending his aura, not as a shield, but as a web, connecting his mind to theirs. He represents the old way, he sent to them, a silent message of intent. The world that cast us out. Today, we show them the new way. We fight not just for a win. We fight for our right to exist. We fight for our home. A chorus of fierce, determined assent echoed back in his mind. When he opened his eyes, they were burning with a golden fire. He gave Sabrina a quick, sharp nod. I won't lose. She held his gaze, and for a fleeting moment, he saw a flicker of genuine hope, a crack in her queenly facade. See that you don't. Ash walked onto the field. Lance stood opposite him, 100 yards away, the very picture of calm, indomitable power. The wind picked up, whipping their clothes. A single drone detached from a carrier and descended between them, its robotic voice acting as referee. This is an official championship-level battle between Lance of the Indigo League and Ash of Saffron City. Standard rules apply. Both trainers will use 6 Pokémon. The battle is over when all 6 Pokémon on one side are unable to continue. Let the battle begin. Lance's expression was grimly serious. I take no pleasure in this, Ash. But duty is a heavy burden. Go, Gyarados. He threw his Pokeball. With a flash of light, a massive, furious Gyarados materialized, its red scales marking it as a rare and exceptionally powerful specimen. It threw its head back and let out a roar that shook the very air, a raw declaration of power. Ash was unfazed. He had chosen his lead carefully. I'm counting on you, old friend. Let's show him what speed really is. Sceptile, I choose you. The verdant flash of light revealed the forest Pokémon, sleek and sharp as a blade of grass. Sceptile struck a low, predatory crouch, the seeds on its back rattling softly, its yellow eyes narrowed in intense focus. A grass type against my Gyarados? A bold, but foolish choice, Ash. Gyarados, Dragon Dance. The sea serpent coiled, a crimson aura flaring around it as it boosted its speed and attack power. It was a classic opening, building momentum for a sweep. Don't let it. Ash snapped. His connection to Sceptile was a live wire of shared instinct. He didn't just see the Gyarados, he felt its energy signature, the way its muscles coiled, the flow of draconic power gathering within it. Left side, below the gills. There's a fractional delay in its energy circulation there. A weak point. Sceptile, Leaf Blade. Aim for the left flank. Sceptile was a green blur. It didn't need to be told twice. It moved with a speed that defied the Dragon Dance boost, crossing the 100-yard field in a handful of heartbeats. The blades of grass on its arms glowed with a vicious energy. Lance's eyes widened slightly. It's fast. Gyarados, dodge and use Ice Fawn. The Gyarados moved, but Ash had already accounted for the dodge. He had seen it in the subtle shift of Lance's posture, the command forming in his mind. He's going to roll. Jump. Ash commanded. As the Gyarados twisted its massive body, Sceptile leaped, using the serpent's own rolling motion as a ramp. It landed lightly on the creature's back, a stunning display of agility. Before Gyarados could react, Sceptile drove both leaf blades deep into its flank, right where Ash had directed. The red Gyarados roared in pain and fury, thrashing wildly to dislodge the smaller Pokémon. Now. Frenzy Plant. It was a gamble. A point-blank frenzy plant was devastating but left the user immobilized. But Ash wasn't just gambling. He was executing. Bound by their aura link, Sceptile understood. It pushed off the Gyarados' back, flipping into the air as colossal, thorny vines erupted from the ground where it had just been. The vines, guided by a flicker of Ash's own will, didn't just attack randomly. They ensnared the thrashing Gyarados, wrapping around its body, its fins, its jaw, binding it in a cage of wood and thorn. The red serpent was completely immobilized. The crowd, watching on screens around the world, was silent. Lance's invincible Gyarados, a terror of the seas, had been neutralized in less than 30 seconds. "It's not over," Lance shouted, his calm finally cracking. Hyper Beam. Even bound, the Gyarados opened its mouth, gathering a cataclysmic sphere of energy. "Finish it," Ash said, his voice cold. Giga Drain. Sceptile landed, its feet touching the ground just as the recharge effect from Frenzy Plant ended. It thrust its hands forward. Tendrils of green light shot out, latching onto the trapped Gyarados. The Hyper Beam faltered as Sceptile began to drain its energy directly. The massive sea serpent shuddered, its crimson scales seeming to dim, and then, with a final groan, it went limp in its thorny prison. Its eyes were swirls. "Gyarados is unable to battle," the drone announced. "Sceptile is the winner." The first victory. Ash hadn't just won, he had dismantled Lance's opening gambit with terrifying precision. He had used his aura not as a sledgehammer, but as a scalpel, finding weaknesses and exploiting them with a speed that bordered on precognition. Lance recalled his Gyarados, his face a mask of grim disbelief. "I see," he murmured, more to himself than to Ash. "This is more than a bond. You're fighting with them." He looked up, his eyes hard with a new level of respect and determination. A fascinating development. But it won't be enough. "Go, Aerodactyl." The prehistoric rock bird burst forth with a piercing shriek, its fossilized form a testament to ancient brutality. Sceptile was visibly tired from the Frenzy Plant and Giga Drain combo. Ash recalled him immediately. "Great job, Sceptile. Get a good rest." He grabbed his next choice. "Okay, Pikachu, you're up." Pikachu leaped from his shoulder and landed on the field, his cheeks sparking. The size difference was comical, a tiny electric mouse against a resurrected predator from the dawn of time. An electric type against a rock/flying type. A neutral matchup. "You're confident," Lance noted. "Aerodactyl, rock slide." The fossil Pokémon roared, and a cascade of massive boulders materialized in the air above Pikachu, ready to crash down and crush him. Pikachu, agility, then Iron Tail on the ground. Pikachu became a yellow streak, easily weaving through the falling rocks. As the last one fell, he leaped, his tail glowing with a metallic sheen, and slammed it not at Aerodactyl, but at the ground. The impact sent a shockwave through the earth, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris, completely obscuring the battlefield. "A smokescreen. A childish tactic," Lance scoffed. "Aerodactyl, ascend. Get above it. Don't let him." Ash yelled. Through the dust, his aura gave him a perfect outline of both Pokémon. He could feel the updraft as Aerodactyl beat its powerful wings. He could also feel the static charge building in Pikachu's cheeks. "Pikachu, jump into the spin. Use the updraft." It was a command that made no sense to an outside observer. But Pikachu understood. He ran, leaped into the swirling vortex of dust, and was caught by the wind from Aerodactyl's wings, which spun him like a top. He was a spinning, electrically charged projectile hidden within the dust cloud. Now. Volt Tackle. From the heart of the swirling dust, a comet of pure electricity shot upwards. Aerodactyl, just beginning to clear the top of the cloud, had no time to react. The Volt Tackle slammed into its underbelly with the force of a missile. The super-effective electric attack, combined with the momentum of the spin, was devastating. Aerodactyl shrieked in agony, its body convulsing from the massive electrical charge, and plummeted from the sky. It crashed to the ground with a heavy thud, unconscious before it even landed. Aerodactyl is unable to battle. 2-0. The world watched in stunned silence. Ash Ketchum was not just fighting, he was conducting a symphony of destruction. His strategies were unorthodox, seemingly reckless, but executed with a level of synchronicity that was simply unheard of. Lance's composure was gone. This was not a battle against a skilled trainer. This was a battle against a new kind of warfare. He recalled Aerodactyl, his knuckles white on the pokeball. "You've grown, Ash," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But you are not the only one. It is time to end this. Prepare yourself for the might of dragons. Dragonite, go." His ace. The same Dragonite he had ridden in on. It landed on the field, its expression shifting from placid to fiercely competitive. It was a powerhouse, a creature that had defeated countless legendary Pokémon. Pikachu was breathing heavily, weakened by the recoil from Volt Tackle. Ash recalled him. "You were incredible, buddy. Take a long rest." He looked at his remaining Pokémon. This was the heart of the battle. He needed to answer Lance's strongest with one of his own. The choice was obvious. Thematic. Necessary. "Lucario, let's go." The Aura Pokémon appeared on the field, its posture a mirror of its trainers. It didn't roar or growl. It simply opened its spiritual senses, its crimson eyes locking onto the Dragonite. The two Pokémon stood in stark contrast: Dragonite, a symbol of overwhelming physical power and draconic might; Lucario, a vessel of spiritual energy and martial discipline. A low hum filled the air as the auras of Ash and Lucario synchronized, merging into a single, cohesive fighting unit. Golden light shimmered around them both. Lance saw it, and for the first time, a shadow of true doubt crossed his face. "So this is your true power. The Guardian and his Knight." Dragonite, extreme speed. Dragonite vanished. It moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of orange aimed directly at Lucario. But Ash wasn't using his eyes. "He's fainting right," circling to the back, Lucario's thought echoed in Ash's mind, calm and clear. "Bone Rush, behind you. Block it." Ash commanded. Lucario spun, a staff of pure blue energy materializing in its paws. It brought the staff up just in time to intercept Dragonite's fist. The impact was immense. A shockwave erupted from the point of contact, tearing up the ground around them. Lucario slid back 10 feet, its paws digging trenches in the dirt, but it held. It had blocked a full-power extreme speed. Lance was speechless. "Our turn." Ash yelled, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Aura Sphere. Still locked with Dragonite, Lucario formed a sphere of crackling blue energy in its free paw and thrust it forward. Dragonite, unable to dodge, took the blast to its chest. It roared and was thrown backward, breaking the lock. "Dragonite, don't give it space." "Dragon Claw." Lance ordered, recovering quickly. Dragonite's claws glowed with a fearsome green energy as it charged again. "Meet it head-on." Metal Claw. Lucario's own claws elongated, shimmering with a steely light. The two Pokémon met in the center of the field in a shower of sparks, a furious exchange of blows too fast for a normal person to track. It was a whirlwind of orange and blue, draconic fury against martial precision. From the sidelines, Sabrina watched, her hands clenched into fists at her side. She was not watching a Pokémon battle. She was watching a coronation. "He's not just giving commands," she thought, her psychic senses analyzing the flow of energy on the field. "He's a part of the battle. His aura, his will, it's flowing into Lucario, guiding every parry, strengthening every blow. This isn't a partnership. It's symbiosis." The stalemate broke. Lucario, guided by Ash's aura-enhanced perception, found an opening in Dragonite's assault, a millisecond of overextension. It ducked under a wide swipe and drove its palm into Dragonite's stomach. Force palm. Ash roared. A jolt of energy pulsed through Dragonite, the paralysis effect taking hold. The mighty dragon froze for a critical second, its muscles locked. "It's over, Lance," Ash declared. He thrust his hand forward, mirroring Lucario's own pose. The golden aura around him blazed. Final aura sphere. This was not the small, swift sphere from before. This was something new. Lucario brought both paws together, and a massive, swirling vortex of energy began to form, not just blue, but shot through with the golden light of Ash's own power. It was a fusion of their life forces, an attack of devastating potential. Lance's eyes were wide with alarm. "Dragonite, break free. Use Hyper Beam. Now." Dragonite roared, shaking off the paralysis through sheer force of will. It opened its mouth, a brilliant orange light gathering for its ultimate attack. The two ultimate moves fired at the same instant. The world turned white. The golden-blue aura sphere and the orange hyper beam met in the middle of the field. For a split second, they held in a perfect, terrible equilibrium, a miniature sun of warring energies. Then, the aura sphere, infused with the indomitable will of a true guardian, began to push back. It consumed the hyper beam, swallowing the draconic energy, and continued on its path, undiminished. It struck Dragonite. The explosion was not loud. It was a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate in the soul. A column of blue and gold light erupted into the sky. When it faded, Dragonite lay in a deep crater, unconscious. Dragonite is unable to battle, the drone's voice was almost hesitant, as if it couldn't believe what it was announcing. 3-0. The champion's ace had fallen. A hush fell over the entire Kanto region. On the command carrier, Tiberius collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. In Pallet Town, a stunned Professor Oak watched the screen, his pipe falling from his mouth. In Cerulean City, Misty held a hand over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. In Pewter City, Brock stared, his expression one of dawning, sickening horror. They hadn't been trying to save Ash from a monster. They had betrayed a legend in the making. Lance recalled his Dragonite, his hand trembling slightly. He looked across the field at Ash and Lucario, who stood wreathed in the fading golden light. He saw the unbreakable bond, the shared power, the perfect harmony. He had already lost. The rest was a formality. He sent out his Salamence. Ash's Infernape, burning with a righteous fury, met it and won with a single, empowered Flare Blitz. 4-0. He sent out his Charizard. Ash's Pikachu, though injured, insisted on one more fight. With Ash's aura guiding him, Pikachu executed a series of maneuvers so blindingly fast and precise that the mighty fire dragon was brought down by a volt crash to the back of the neck. 5-0. It came down to Lance's last Pokémon, a powerful, stoic Kingdra. He looked at the Pokeball, then back at Ash, who had not even recalled Pikachu yet. Lance lowered his head. He raised his hand. "I forfeit," he said, his voice quiet but firm. It was the most shocking move of the entire battle. He did not sacrifice his last Pokémon. He admitted defeat. The drone hovered for a moment. Lance has forfeited the match. The winner is Ash of Saffron City. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from within the walls of Saffron, a roar erupted. It was a sound of jubilation, of relief, of victory. Their champion, their new king, had won. He had defended their home and secured their freedom. Ash recalled Pikachu, patting the Pokeball. "You were the best, buddy. All of you." He looked up at Lance, who was walking towards him, his face a complex mixture of humiliation, awe, and dawning understanding. He stopped before Ash. "The world has changed," Lance said softly. I came here to enforce an old order. You have shown me that a new one is being born. He looked Ash in the eye, and the fear was gone, replaced by a deep, troubled respect. I am a man of my word. The Indigo League recognizes the full sovereignty of Saffron City. Our forces will withdraw. A formal treaty will be drafted. He offered his hand. Ash looked at it, then took it. The handshake was firm. It was the sealing of a new era. As they stood there, Ash's aura, still active, brushed against Lance. And then he felt it. Faint, but unmistakable. Attached to Lance's aide, a severe-looking woman standing near the edge of the field, was a sliver of the same sickening, void-like energy he had felt from the corrupted Tyranitar. The same fanatical paranoia he had sensed in Misty and Brock. It was whispering to her, feeding her fear and outrage at Lance's defeat. The League wasn't just mistaken. It was compromised. The whispers were spreading. Lance turned to leave, but Ash spoke, his voice low. Lance. Be careful who you trust. Your real enemies may not be the ones you challenge on a battlefield. Lance stopped, a frown creasing his brow. He didn't understand the warning, not fully, but the sincerity in Ash's voice gave him pause. He nodded slowly, then mounted his Dragonite and ascended into the sky, a defeated champion with a world of new questions. The League fleet began to move, turning away from the city they had come to conquer. Ash stood on the field, the cheers of his new city washing over him. He had won. He had secured their future. He was a king. But as he watched the ships retreat, he knew his battle was far from over. He had won a fight for territory, for freedom. But a war for the soul of the world was brewing in the shadows, and he had just placed himself at the very center of it. Sabrina walked up to him, her expression serene, but her eyes blazed with triumph. They will write stories about this day, she said. Ash nodded, his gaze distant. Let them, he replied. But the story is just beginning. Chapter 4, The Gathering of Misfits. Victory was a strange and unfamiliar weight. For Ash, victory had always been a fleeting, personal high, a badge earned, a tournament trophy held aloft, a friend saved. It was followed by a handshake and a walk towards the next horizon. This was different. This victory was a foundation stone. It was ownership. It was a border drawn around a plot of land, a declaration to the world that said, "This is ours." In the week that followed the battle with Lance, Saffron City was transformed. The quiet, self-contained metropolis, which had always held itself aloof from the world, was now the subject of global fascination and frantic political debate. It was no longer Saffron City, home of the psychic gym leader. It was the Saffron Sovereignty, the Aura Kingdom, a rogue state legitimized by the public defeat of a champion. The Indigo League, true to Lance's word, had withdrawn. A formal treaty, the Saffron Accords, was signed via remote conference. It was a document stark in its simplicity. The Indigo League recognized Saffron's territorial and political autonomy. In return, Saffron would not take aggressive action against any League-affiliated territory. It was a ceasefire, not a friendship. A tense peace born of mutually assured destruction. Ash stood on the same terrace where he had grieved, but the view had changed. He wasn't looking at a city he was visiting, he was looking at a city he was now responsible for. Pikachu was on the railing, happily munching on a new brand of ketchup Sabrina had procured for him from a specialty store in Unova. Lucario meditated nearby, its aura a calm, steady sea beside Ash's own restless ocean. You've been staring at the southern district for an hour. Sabrina's voice made him turn. She approached, carrying a tablet computer that looked impossibly thin and advanced. She wore a deep purple dress, the color of twilight, and her hair was held back by a simple silver clasp. In the week since the battle, a subtle shift had occurred in their dynamic. The formal distance was still there, but it was now punctuated by moments of easy familiarity. They were no longer just allies of convenience, they were partners in a grand, terrifying enterprise. The power grid down there flickers every time the maglev train comes into the main station, Ash said, turning back to the view. It's a minor drain, but it's inefficient. A symptom of an old system. Sabrina raised an eyebrow. You can see the power grid? Not see it, Ash corrected. Feel it. The flow of energy is choppy. Like a river hitting a bad snag. He flexed his fingers, a faint golden shimmer dancing around them. Since the battle, his control had grown exponentially. He was beginning to perceive the world as a complex tapestry of interwoven energies, electrical, biological, psychic, kinetic. Fascinating, she mused, making a note on her tablet. I've been managing the city's infrastructure through predictive algorithms and psychic monitoring for years. You are a walking diagnostic tool. I'm just pointing out a problem, Ash said. I don't know how to fix it. But that is the point, Sabrina countered, stepping to stand beside him at the railing. A city is not a kingdom. And a kingdom is not two rulers and a handful of loyalists. It needs a body. A brain, a heart, hands, eyes. We have the first two. We need the others. She turned the tablet towards him. Displayed on the screen were several dossiers, each with a picture and a summary. The Saffron Accords have given us legitimacy, but they've also painted a target on our backs, she explained, her tone all business. The other leagues, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, they will see us as a threat to the established world order. We have powerful friends in unexpected places, but we also have enemies we haven't even met. We need allies. Not just soldiers, but specialists. Geniuses. Misfits. People with power and vision who have been stifled by the League's bureaucracy. The first dossier she pulled up showed a man with a wild mane of white hair, a mischievous glint in his eye, and a lab coat that looked like it had survived several explosions. Blaine, Ash read aloud. The gym leader of Cinnabar Island. The former gym leader of Cinnabar Island, Sabrina corrected. He resigned his post 3 days ago. The League demanded he integrate their standardized training and safety protocols. They wanted to turn his volcanic, freeform gym into a sanitized tourist attraction. He told them, and I quote, to shove their rulebook into the caldera. Ash couldn't help but smile. Sounds like Blaine. He is a brilliant scientist and a master of fire-type Pokemon, Sabrina continued. His research into Pokemon biology and energy conversion is decades ahead of the Sylph Company remnants. He is also fiercely independent and resents the League's heavy-handed authority. He's a prime candidate. But he's stubborn. He won't come just because we ask. The next dossier showed a striking woman with purple hair styled into an extravagant, gravity-defying shape. She was dressed in a ghostly, elegant gown. Fantina, Sabrina said. Sinnoh's Heart Home Gym leader. A master of ghost types and a contest spectacular prodigy. She is a powerhouse, but the Sinnoh League finds her theatrics to be undignified. They constantly try to rein her in, to make her conform. She feels creatively and spiritually suffocated. And her connection to the spirit world gives her a unique perspective on threats most people can't even perceive. A third dossier appeared. This one didn't have a proper picture, just a grainy security camera still of a figure in a hooded jacket hunched over a complex console. The name was listed as Janus. This one is different, Sabrina said, her voice lowering slightly. No one knows his real name. They call him Janus. He was one of Team Galactic's top engineers. He designed the systems that powered the Red Chain and the Galactic Bomb. When Cyrus was defeated, Janus vanished. He wasn't a true believer in their nihilistic philosophy, he was just an immoral genius who wanted to work on the most challenging theoretical projects imaginable. He sees technology as the ultimate art form. The League wants him imprisoned. I want him to redesign our power grid. Ash looked at the files. A hot-headed scientist, a stifled artist, and a reformed supervillains engineer. Misfits. They're all people the League has alienated, Ash observed. Precisely, Sabrina said. The League demands conformity. We can offer something far more valuable, freedom. The freedom to pursue their passions, to test their limits, to be who they are without apology. She fixed him with a challenging look. But they won't follow me. I am a cold, logical queen. They will see me as a new warden. They need to be inspired. They need to see the heart of this kingdom, not just its mind. They need to meet you. The weight of responsibility settled on Ash's shoulders again, heavier this time. He wasn't just a symbol of power anymore. He was to be a diplomat. A recruiter. A king gathering his court. All right, he said, his voice firm. Where do we start? Cinnabar Island was wreathed in steam. The volcano that formed its core, once a tourist attraction, was now actively venting, its slopes closed off to all but the most determined. Blaine's new laboratory was not in the rebuilt town, but carved directly into the mountain's side, a reinforced blast door the only sign of its existence. Getting a meeting had been Sabrina's task. A simple psychic message, an offer of a private conversation, had been enough to pique the old man's curiosity. Persuading him was Ash's. The blast door hissed open, revealing Blaine himself. He looked even more wild and energetic in person, his white hair standing on end as if from a perpetual static charge. He wore tinted goggles perched on his forehead and a grin that was equal parts welcoming and mad. A powerful mag mortar stood behind him, its arm cannons radiating a palpable heat. The man who made Lance forfeit. Blaine boomed, his voice echoing off the stone walls. And the Ice Queen of Saffron herself. I was wondering when you'd show up. Heard you were collecting strays. Come in, come in. Don't mind the mess. The mess was a laboratory that looked like a battlefield. Wires snaked across the floor, consoles sparked intermittently, and a half-disassembled engine of some kind took up the center of the room, humming with a dangerous-sounding energy. We've come to make you an offer, Blaine, Sabrina began, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaotic surroundings. I know, Blaine waved a dismissive hand. You want my big brain and my fiery friends for your new little empire. A cushy lab, unlimited funding, the whole 9 yards. It's tempting. He walked over to a console and tapped a few keys. A holographic schematic of a Pokémon's cellular structure appeared in the air. But I've had my fill of politics. I just want to be left alone to do my work. The League won't leave you alone, Ash said, stepping forward. They see you as a liability. Sooner or later, they'll send someone to shut you down for good. Blaine chuckled, turning to face him. Let them try, Sonny. My mag mortar and I have held off worse. I'm not looking for a new master, be it the League or you. He crossed his arms, his grin turning into a challenging smirk. Besides, what makes you think you're any different? You've got power. The League's got power. Power always corrupts. It always leads to rules and restrictions. I just got out of one cage. Why would I walk into another? This was the test. Ash knew it. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a challenge of ideals. We don't have rules, Ash said simply. We have one. And you're looking at it. Blaine raised an eyebrow. Our only rule is that we protect Saffron and its people, Ash explained. Inside those walls, you can do whatever you want. Build whatever you want. As long as it doesn't endanger the lives of our citizens, you have total freedom. We're not offering you a cage. We're offering you a sanctuary with a shield. My shield. He met the old scientist's gaze, his own eyes unflinching. I don't want your obedience, Blaine. I want your passion. I want your genius. The League is afraid of what you can do. I want to see you unleash it. Blaine stared at him for a long moment, his smirk fading. He looked at Ash, at the quiet, immense power radiating from him, at the sincerity in his words. He saw not a politician or a tyrant, but a fellow firebrand, a kindred spirit who understood the burning desire to push beyond the accepted limits. Ha! Ha 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 ha! Blaine's booming laugh filled the lab, startling a flock of pidgey outside. Unleash it. I like that. You've got fire, kid. Real fire. He slapped his knee. All right, you've got a deal. But on one condition. Name it, Ash said. Blaine's eyes twinkled. A battle. 2 on 2. My mag mortar and my arcanine against 2 of yours. I want to see this aura power of yours up close. I want to feel the heat. Ash grinned. It was the first genuine, happy grin he'd had in weeks. It felt good. You're on. The battle that followed was short, explosive, and joyous. It wasn't a contest of stakes, but a celebration of power. Ash used his Infernape and his Charizard, meeting Blaine's ferocious fire with his own. He didn't just command them, he fought alongside them, his aura flaring as he pushed them to new heights. He anticipated Magmortar's overheat, countering with a flare blitz that was perfectly timed to hit its weakened state. He used Charizard's flight to outmaneuver Arcanine's extreme speed, ending the match with a seismic toss from a dizzying height. He won, but more importantly, he earned Blaine's respect. The scientist was ecstatic, even in defeat. He saw Ash's power not as a weapon of control, but as an instrument of potential. Incredible. The symbiotic energy transference is off the charts. Blaine exclaimed, already scribbling equations on a nearby whiteboard. We need to build a bigger lab. I have theories, so many theories. Your power grid problem? Give me 2 weeks. I'll turn Saffron into the most energy-efficient city on the planet. As they left Cinnabar, a new security alert pinged on Sabrina's tablet. A small, automated freighter carrying Blaine's most sensitive equipment was already en route to Saffron, a personal escort of fire Pokémon flying alongside it. 1 down. 2 to go. Recruiting Fantina was an entirely different challenge. She agreed to meet them not in her gym, but in the Celestial Tower in Unova, a place of profound spiritual energy. They found her on the top floor, standing before the bell used to soothe the spirits of departed Pokémon. The air was still and heavy, filled with a silence that was not empty, but full of unheard whispers. Her Drifblim and Mismagius floated near the ceiling, their ethereal forms blending with the shadows. The king and queen of the new age, Fantina greeted them, her voice a melodic, accented lilt. She curtsied dramatically. It is an honor. I felt your arrival long before your little jet landed. Such vibrant energies. One of gold, like a defiant sun. And one of violet, like a deep and thoughtful twilight. Fantina, Sabrina said, getting straight to the point. We want you to join us. Hearthome no longer values your talents. Saffron would. Fantina smiled, a slow, sad expression. Valued? None. They tolerate me. I am a spectacle, a tourist draw. But they do not understand. They see my ghosts as performers in a play. They do not feel their loneliness, their joy, their sorrow. She drifted towards the bell, running a hand over its cool surface. I stay for them. The spirits of this place, and of my home. Who would listen to them if I were to leave? This was a challenge of the heart, not of logic or power. Ash stepped forward, his own senses tingling in the spiritually dense atmosphere. He could feel them. Faint, wispy presences. The echoes of Pokémon who had passed. He felt not just Fantina's Pokémon, but hundreds of others, lingering like faint perfume in the air. You think you're the only one who can hear them, Ash said softly. Fantina turned, her eyes widening in surprise. You can feel them? Ash nodded. I can feel their peace. This is a good place. But I can also feel your frustration. It's like a loud, sharp note in a quiet song. You're not happy here. He looked at her mismagious. Your Pokémon feel it too. They long for a place where they don't have to perform. Where they can simply be. He extended his senses, letting his aura brush against the spectral energy in the room. He didn't try to command it or analyze it. He simply listened. They're not bound to this place, he said after a moment. The spirits. They're not trapped. They're drawn to you. To your empathy. To the light you shine in the darkness for them. He met her gaze, his own full of a deep, resonant understanding. That light doesn't belong to Hearthome City or the Sinnoh League. It belongs to you. You can shine it anywhere. They will follow you. Fantina was speechless. He had seen past her flamboyant exterior, past her reputation, and looked directly into her soul. He understood her burden and her gift in a way no one else ever had. Tears welled in her eyes, shimmering like starlight. Magnifique, she whispered. To be so seen. She didn't need a battle. She didn't need a promise of funding. She needed to know she wouldn't be abandoning her sacred duty. Ash had given her that. I will need some time to make my arrangements, she said, her composure returning, though her voice was thick with emotion. But you can expect me in Saffron by the new moon. We will make your city a stage for the most spectacular show the world has ever seen. A dance of life, death, and everything in between. 2 down. The most dangerous one remained. Finding Janice was like trying to catch smoke. He had no fixed location, moving through the digital and physical underworlds with ease. It was Sabrina who finally cornered him. She didn't track his body, she tracked his digital footprint. She found him hiding in a shell corporation's servers, running complex simulations. She didn't send an email. She psychically projected a single, unsolvable equation into his mind, a theoretical problem related to dimensional energy transfer that would tantalize a mind like his. The bait worked. He responded with a set of encrypted coordinates. A rendezvous point. A derelict power plant in a forgotten corner of the Hoenn region. They arrived to find the plant eerily silent. The only light was the green glow of emergency signs. Ash and Sabrina walked through the cavernous, rusting turbine hall, their footsteps echoing. Pikachu was a tense ball of electricity on Ash's shoulder. Sabrina's alakazam floated behind them, its spoons glowing, ready for a trap. Impressive, a synthesized voice echoed from hidden speakers. You actually came. Alone. Either you're confident or you're stupid. We're efficient, Sabrina replied coolly. We're here to make you an offer, Janice. A real challenge. Not just games and simulations. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the hall. It was a young man, probably no older than Ash, with tired eyes and a perpetually slouching posture. He wore a simple gray hoodie and cargo pants. He looked less like a criminal mastermind and more like a student who hadn't slept in a week. He was flanked by 2 immense, menacing magnazones, which floated silently, their central eyes glowing red. I've heard the offer, Janice said, his voice now natural, a bored monotone. Work for the new kings of the block. A pardon for my past indiscretions. Unlimited resources. It's a good pitch. But it has a flaw. And what's that? Ash asked, his hand resting near his pokeballs. You can't protect me, Janice stated flatly. Not really. Team Galactic wasn't just Cyrus and his commanders. It was a network. There are remnants out there, zealots who still believe in the cause. They think I'm a traitor. They'll hunt me forever. And the League? They'll never stop either. Your little city-state is a fortress, sure. But I can't live my life inside a fortress. I need to travel, to gather data, to see things. Your protection ends at your border. He had a point. Their power was absolute, but geographically contained. You want to be able to walk in the open, Ash surmised. To be free not just in Saffron, but everywhere. To be invisible. Janice nodded. Anonymity is the only true safety. Something you've recently lost, I hear. Ash met his tired, cynical gaze. He understood the boy's paranoia. He had lived it, for a few short days. The feeling of being hunted. What if we could give you that? Ash asked. A new identity. A complete wipe. Not just a fake name, but a new digital and physical reality. A ghost in the machine. Janice laughed, a short, bitter sound. Impossible. Biometric scans, aura signatures, psychic resonance, there are too many markers. You can't just erase a person. He can, Sabrina said, gesturing to Ash. Janice stopped laughing. He looked at Ash, truly looked at him, his analytical eyes scanning him up and down. The Aura Guardian. Right. I've analyzed the footage of your little performance. The energy manipulation is unprecedented. But that's destructive, or constructive. It's not, subtle. You think aura is just for shields and shining blasts of light? Ash asked. He took a step forward. Janice's magnezones moved to intercept him, their bodies crackling with electricity. It's all right, Janice said, waving them off. He was curious now. Ash stopped a few feet from him. Aura is life force. It's the energy of identity. It's in every cell of your body. It's in the way you walk, the way you think. It's your unique signature in the symphony of the world. He raised his hand, and a soft, gentle golden light enveloped Janice. It wasn't an attack. It felt like warm sunlight. A signature, Ash said, his voice low and focused, can be changed. He focused his will, not on overwhelming or healing, but on something far more complex. He reached out with his aura and touched Janice's own, a chaotic, spiky, and brilliant pattern of energy. He didn't try to erase it. He gently, carefully, began to retune it. He smoothed the sharp edges, shifted the resonant frequency, altered the foundational patterns. It was like editing a piece of music, changing the key and the tempo until it was an entirely new song. Janice gasped, his eyes wide. He could feel it. A strange, fundamental shift deep within his own being. It wasn't painful. It felt liberating. After a minute, Ash lowered his hand, the light fading. Janice stood there, breathing heavily. He looked the same. But he felt different. Check your vitals, Sabrina said, a triumphant note in her voice. Janice shakily pulled a device from his pocket and scanned himself. His eyes widened in disbelief. His heart rate pattern, his brainwave frequencies, even the bioelectric field of his skin, all of it had been subtly but fundamentally altered. He was, to any scanner in the world, a completely different person. And for the final touch, Sabrina said. Her own eyes glowed with violet light. She focused on Janice, weaving a complex psychic illusion, a permanent glamour that would subtly alter how cameras and facial recognition software perceived him. She wasn't changing his face, but how technology interpreted it. You're a ghost, Janice whispered, staring at his hands. He looked up at Ash, his cynicism gone, replaced by the same awe Blaine had shown. You gave me a new life. We're giving you a choice, Ash said. Use that new life to hide in the shadows, or use it to build a better world with us. Janice didn't need to think. He recalled his magnezones. My lab in Saffron, he said, his voice filled with a newfound energy. I'll need a direct fiber line to the global network and a server farm with quantum processing capabilities. Your power grid is just the start. I'm going to build you a digital kingdom, a network so secure, so advanced, the rest of the world will be living in the dark ages. He looked at Ash, a flicker of something like loyalty in his tired eyes. You kept your word. I'll keep mine. No one will ever threaten your city from the shadows again. I'll be the ghost that haunts them. As they flew back to Saffron, the kingdom felt more real. They had their Minister of Science, their Minister of Culture, and now, their Minister of Information. A council of powerful, brilliant misfits, all drawn to the promise of freedom and the magnetic pull of their new king. But as Ash looked out the window at the world below, he felt a familiar, creeping chill. The whispers. He had sensed them on Cinnabar, a flicker of paranoia in a dock worker. He had felt them in the Celestial Tower, a trace of despair clinging to a tourist. And just now, in the derelict power plant, he'd felt it in the very rust, a faint echo of entropy and decay. The void. The silent king. It was everywhere. A subtle poison seeping into the cracks of the world. They were building a kingdom of light, but the shadows were growing longer, deeper, and hungrier. And Ash knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that their growing light would soon draw the full attention of the darkness. Chapter 5, Whispers of the Void. The months that followed the gathering of the court were a blur of furious, productive creation. Saffron City, once a monument to one woman's isolation, became a vibrant, thrumming crucible of innovation. It was a kingdom coming to life. Blaine, given free rein and an almost unlimited budget, worked with a manic glee that was both terrifying and inspiring. The Southern power grid was not just repaired, it was revolutionized. Guided by Janice's designs and powered by Blaine's new geothermal converters tapped deep into the planet's mantle, Saffron became energy independent. The city's lights shone brighter, its systems ran smoother, and its carbon footprint vanished. Blaine's lab, a new, sprawling complex built into the bedrock beneath the city, became a wonderland of controlled chaos, filled with the roar of fire types and the scientists' booming laughter. Fantina, true to her word, transformed the city's culture. She established the Ethereal Theater, a grand venue where trainers and coordinators explored the artistic symbiosis with their Pokémon. Her ghost-type spectaculars were hauntingly beautiful, weaving tales of myth and legend that drew crowds from across the city. She brought a soul to the city of steel and glass, a sense of wonder that softened its hard, modern edges. She became a beloved figure, the heart of their new community. Janice, from his subterranean server farm he called the Crypt, became the kingdom's silent, unseen guardian. He wove a digital web around Saffron that was impenetrable. He not only secured their communications and infrastructure but also turned his considerable talents outward. He became a ghost in the global machine, a whisper in the networks of other regions. He monitored league communications, tracked financial markets, and identified potential threats long before they materialized. He fed Ash and Sabrina a constant stream of intelligence, giving them an almost omniscient view of the world's political landscape. Ash and Sabrina were the axis around which this new world turned. Their days were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, public appearances, and oversight. They were no longer just a king and queen, they were the chief executives of a burgeoning nation-state. Their professional partnership had deepened into a comfortable, unspoken rhythm. They could communicate entire strategies with a shared glance, finish each other's sentences in council meetings, and find a strange solace in late-night sessions spent poring over city plans, the only two people awake in a sleeping palace. The romance, if it could be called that, was not one of grand gestures or flowery words. It was forged in the quiet moments between crises. It was Ash bringing Sabrina a mug of the same rich cocoa from that first night on the terrace when he found her asleep at her console, her psychic energy depleted after a day of screening new immigrants. It was Sabrina placing a cool hand on his forehead after a particularly draining aura training session, her touch instantly soothing the phantom pains. It was a bond built on shared responsibility, mutual respect, and the profound, unspoken understanding of two souls who had found their only equal in a world that had cast them out. Ash, for his part, had changed. The raw, reactive anger of his betrayal had cooled into a solid, unshakable core of purpose. He was a king. The title felt less strange with each passing day. He spent his mornings in intense training with Lucario, pushing the limits of his aura not for destruction, but for control. He learned to weave it into fine, intricate patterns, to feel the life force of every blade of grass in the palace gardens, to hear the silent, tectonic hum of the planet itself. He was becoming more than a guardian, he was becoming a part of the world's living energy. But for all their success, for all the light they were building, a shadow was growing. It started as a trickle of disturbing data from Janus. Reports of erratic Pokémon behavior on a global scale. A pod of Wylord beaching themselves in Hoenn for no reason. A flock of Staraptor in Sinnoh suddenly flying south for the winter, a migration pattern they had never exhibited. Small, dissonant notes in the world's symphony. Then came the storms. Freak weather patterns began to plague the shipping lanes. Sudden, violent typhoons in the South Seas. Unseasonable blizzards in the north. The world's weather, a complex but predictable system, was becoming chaotic. The Indigo League's meteorologists were baffled, their models failing completely. Sabrina felt it as a psychic disturbance. A low-level, global thrum of anxiety. A background noise of fear that was slowly growing in volume. She couldn't pinpoint the source, but it felt vast, ancient, and deeply wrong. Ash felt it in his aura. The sweet, clean energy of the planet was being soured. It was like a single drop of poison in a vast reservoir, slowly, inexorably spreading. It was the same void-like taint he had cleansed from the Tyranitar, but this was not focused in one creature. It was diffuse, everywhere at once. The crisis came to a head on a Tuesday. Ash was on the training grounds, a vast holographic chamber that could replicate any environment. He was sparring with Infernape, not with another Pokémon, but himself. He wore no armor, used no weapon. It was a dance of fire and aura. He flowed around Infernape's attacks, his own body wreathed in a thin, protective layer of golden energy, redirecting the flaming punches with open-palmed blocks, his movements a fluid mix of martial arts and pure instinct. Suddenly, a wave of nauseating psychic energy washed over the entire city. It was a scream. A silent, soul-tearing scream that had no sound but was felt in the mind of every psychic, every sensitive human, and every single Pokémon. In the training room, Infernape cried out and collapsed, clutching its head. Ash staggered back, a hand flying to his temple as the psychic shriek tore through his own defenses. It felt like a billion voices crying out in agony at once. He dropped to one knee, the golden aura around him sputtering. Ash. Lucario's mental voice was a lifeline in the storm, a sharp spike of alarm. The ocean. It's coming from the ocean. Alarms blared throughout the palace. Ash straightened up, ignoring the phantom pain in his skull, and ran from the training room. He met Sabrina in the main corridor. She was pale, her hand braced against a wall, Alakazam hovering protectively beside her, its spoons vibrating with distress. What was that? Ash demanded. A consciousness, Sabrina breathed, her eyes wide with a fear Ash had never seen in her before. Vast. Powerful. And in absolute agony. They burst into the command center. Janus was already on the main screen, his face grim. Blaine and Fantina were patched in from their respective locations, their expressions reflecting the same shock and confusion. Report. Sabrina commanded, her voice regaining its authority. Massive energy spike originating from the Whirl Islands, Janus said, his fingers flying across his keyboard, bringing up maps and sensor readings. Seismic activity is off the charts. We're detecting tidal fluctuations that defy all known physics. We're talking 100-foot waves being generated spontaneously. A satellite feed filled the main screen. It showed the ocean around the Whirl Islands, a place known for its treacherous currents. But this was something else. The sea was a churning, black maw. A storm of impossible intensity had formed from a clear sky, a vortex of black clouds and green lightning. It's Lugia, Ash said, his voice a grim whisper. He stared at the screen, at the heart of the storm, and he could feel it. A majestic, powerful presence, twisted into a knot of pure, frenzied rage. The psychic scream had been its own. Lugia is the guardian of the seas, Fantina said, her voice trembling. It maintains the balance of the ocean currents, the very lifeblood of the planet. If it has been driven mad, it will tear the world apart, Blaine finished, his usual boisterous energy gone, replaced by a scientist's stark horror. The tidal waves it could generate, they would wipe out every coastal city on the planet. This is an extinction-level event. The leagues are mobilizing, Janice reported. Hoenn and Giotto are sending their fleets. Their orders are to try and subdue it, but their secondary protocol is termination. They're willing to kill Lugia to stop the storms. Fools. Sabrina spat. Killing a legendary of that magnitude would shatter the planet's ecosystem just as surely as the storms will. They see a rabid dog that needs to be put down. They don't see the disease. She was right. Ash could feel it. Lugia wasn't the source of the problem. It was a victim. The same foul, empty energy he had felt before was wrapped around Lugia's immense consciousness like a parasite, driving it insane with pain and paranoia. The Whispers had found their grandest puppet yet. We can't let them kill it, Ash said, his decision instantaneous. He looked at Sabrina. We have to go. Now. Go. Blaine protested. Ash, that thing is a god in a hurricane. What can you possibly do? What I did on him to... Silver, Ash replied, his gaze locked with Sabrina's. I can purify it. But I can't do it alone. The psychic feedback is too strong. It's on a scale I can't even comprehend. Sabrina understood immediately. You need me to shield you. To open a path through the psychic storm of its mind so your aura can reach the core of the corruption. It was a plan born of desperation, 1,000-to-1 shot. It would require them to get close to a maddened legendary in the heart of a supernatural vortex, a feat no League ship could manage. Our new prototype, Janice said suddenly. The Phantom. It's a small, two-man submersible Blaine and I designed. It's equipped with a stealth drive and a localized kinetic barrier. It might be able to get you through the storm undetected. It's untested. Blaine argued. The pressure, the energy readings. It'll be torn apart. It's our only chance, Ash said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Get it ready. Sabrina and I are on our way. He turned to leave, but Sabrina stopped him, her hand on his arm. Her touch was firm, her eyes intense. Ash, if we do this, the amount of psychic and aura energy required will be immense. We will be completely exposed. If we fail, it won't just kill us. It will obliterate our consciousness. I know, he said softly. He looked at her, at the woman who had become his partner, his confidant, his queen. He saw the fear in her eyes, but beneath it, an unbending resolve that matched his own. But we're the only ones who can. A silent understanding passed between them. This was the true test of their kingdom. Not a battle for land or legitimacy, but a battle for the world itself. The Phantom was a thing of sleek, dark beauty. It looked less like a submarine and more like a predatory fish carved from obsidian. It plunged into the churning water miles from the storm's epicenter, its stealth drive rendering it invisible to both radar and sonar. Inside, the cockpit was snug. Ash and Sabrina sat side by side, surrounded by holographic displays showing the maelstrom outside. Kinetic barriers are holding at 80%, Janice's voice crackled over the comms. But the ambient energy is playing havoc with our sensors. You're flying blind. We don't need sensors, Ash said. He closed his eyes, extending his aura. He could feel Lugia's presence, a blazing, agonizing sun in a sea of darkness. I can feel it. I can guide us in. Sabrina placed her fingertips on the cockpit's canopy. Her own eyes glowed with fuchsia light. And I can feel its mind. It's a nightmare. A cacophony of fear, rage, and a single, repeated whisper, what does it say? Ash asked, his hands gripping the controls. All is chaos. All is dust. Trust nothing. Destroy everything, she recited, her voice strained. It's a psychic virus. A weaponized ideology of pure nihilism. The void. The silent king. It had a voice. The journey to the eye of the storm was a descent into hell. The phantom was tossed about like a toy, the kinetic barriers groaning and flickering under the strain of the unnatural currents. Outside, shadows of enraged sea Pokemon, their eyes glowing with the same sickly magenta as the Tyranitar, darted past, drawn to Lugia's maddened call. They broke through into the eye. The chaos of the storm wall gave way to an eerie, calm circle of water. In the center, floating just above the surface, was Lugia. It was a magnificent, terrible sight. Its beautiful white and blue hide was marred by shifting patterns of black and violet energy that writhed across its skin. Its eyes were no longer intelligent and gentle, they were solid orbs of burning purple rage. It beat its massive wings slowly, maintaining its position, the source of the hurricane that was tearing the ocean apart. The League fleets are closing in, Janice's voice warned. They're 5 minutes out. They're powering up their main weapons. We're out of time, Ash said. He looked at Sabrina. Ready? She nodded, her face pale but determined. Let's begin. Ash disengaged the stealth drive. The phantom appeared on the surface, a tiny black speck in the presence of a god. Lugia's head snapped towards them. A psychic roar of pure hatred slammed into the submersible, and the kinetic barriers shattered instantly. The hull groaned, threatening to implode. Now, Sabrina. Sabrina's eyes blazed. She threw her head back, and a wave of her own immense psychic power erupted from the submersible. It was not an attack. It was a shield, a sanctuary. A bubble of pure, calm, ordered thought that slammed into Lugia's storm of madness. The effect was instantaneous. Lugia recoiled, its psychic scream faltering as it encountered a will as powerful as its own. It was a mental battle of titans, a psychic queen against a corrupted god. Sabrina's shield was buying Ash the opening he needed. Sweat beaded on her forehead. A trickle of blood ran from her nose. Ash. I can't hold it for long. Its mind is a fortress of pain. Ash didn't waste a second. He stood up in the cockpit, pushing the canopy open. The wind and spray lashed at him, but he stood firm, his feet planted. He was a man standing on a floating coffin in the heart of a god's rage. He closed his eyes and reached inward, to the core of his being. He drew on the wellspring of his aura, not just his own, but the faint, resonant energy of the planet itself. He became a conduit. A brilliant, blinding golden light erupted from him, dwarfing the phantom, turning the dark eye of the storm into a miniature dawn. He extended his hands towards the tormented legendary. Lugia, he roared, his voice amplified by his own power. I am not your enemy. I am here to help you. He poured his aura out, not as a weapon, but as a cleansing fire. It was a torrent of pure, golden, ordered energy that flowed across the water and washed over Lugia. The moment the aura touched it, the dark, corrupting energy on its skin recoiled, hissing like water on a hot skillet. Lugia screamed, this time in both pain and confusion, torn between the maddening whispers of the void and the pure, healing touch of the guardian. It fought back. A beam of pure, chaotic energy, an aeroblast twisted into a weapon of raw destruction, shot from its mouth, aimed directly at Ash. Sabrina cried out, her own psychic shield faltering as she tried to divert some of her power to protect him. But Ash didn't flinch. Lucario, with me. He sent, a desperate call across the miles. In Saffron, Lucario's eyes snapped open. On the training ground, it assumed a meditative pose, and its own blue aura flared to life, reaching out, connecting with its partners across the vast distance, adding its strength to his. The golden light around Ash intensified. He met the corrupted aeroblast not with a shield, but with his own wave of power. The two forces met, and for a terrifying moment, the dark energy began to overpower the gold. It was too much. The corruption was too deep. Lugia's will was too strong. He was failing. Then, he felt another presence join the link. A cool, violet intelligence. Sabrina. She wasn't just holding back the psychic storm anymore. She was weaving her own energy into his, her precise, cold logic and immense telekinetic power acting as a channel, a focusing lens for his raw aura. Their powers, gold and violet, intertwined, creating something new, something stronger than the sum of its parts. Together, her thought was a firm, clear note in his mind. Together, he answered. Their combined energy, a spiraling lance of gold and violet light, pierced through the corrupted aeroblast and struck Lugia directly in the chest. It was a blow not to the body, but to the soul. Ash and Sabrina were pulled from their own minds, drawn into the maelstrom of Lugia's consciousness. They were adrift in a psychic sea of pure chaos. They saw visions of a silent, empty cosmos, of stars turning to dust, of a great, unblinking eye made of pure nothingness. They heard the whisper, now a deafening roar, promising the sweet peace of oblivion. All is chaos. All is dust. This was the heart of the void. A philosophy of despair. And in the center of it all, they saw Lugia's true consciousness, a tiny, flickering light, a prisoner in its own mind. Ash reached for it, not with his hand, but with his spirit. He didn't fight the darkness. He ignored it. He focused only on that small, terrified light. You are the guardian of the sea, Ash projected, his thought a beacon of pure certainty. You are a force of life, of balance. Not of destruction. Remember who you are. Sabrina added her own strength, creating a protective wall around Lugia's consciousness, shielding it from the void's influence, giving it a moment of clarity. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, the light flickered, threatening to go out. Then, fueled by their belief, it flared. It remembered. A new psychic roar erupted from Lugia, but this one was not of pain or rage. It was of defiance. It was the guardian of the seas reclaiming its own mind. Back in the physical world, the black and violet energy on Lugia's skin was violently ejected, dissolving into shrieking black smoke that vanished into the air. Its eyes cleared, the burning purple fading back to their normal, intelligent blue. The storm died. As if a switch had been flipped, the hurricane-force wind ceased. The black clouds dissipated, revealing the clear blue sky above. The churning sea grew calm. The world was suddenly, blessedly silent. Lugia, exhausted, looked down at the tiny submersible. It met Ash's gaze, and a wave of pure, profound gratitude washed over them, a psychic message far more powerful than words. Then, the legendary showed them a vision. It wasn't forced, it was a gift. An image burned directly into their minds. They saw a throne. A jagged, broken thing that seemed carved from frozen entropy, sitting in a realm of absolute nothingness, a dimension between dimensions. And on the throne sat a figure. It had a vaguely humanoid silhouette, but it was made not of matter or energy, but of pure void, a hole in reality. It wore a fractured crown that seemed to drink the light around it. It did not move. It did not speak. It simply was. The source of the whispers. The origin of the corruption. The silent king on his throne of ruin. The vision faded. Lugia gave them a final, solemn nod, then with a beat of its massive wings, it dove beneath the waves, vanishing into the deep. On the submersible, Ash collapsed to his knees, his strength utterly spent. Sabrina slumped in her seat, blood streaming from her nose and ears, conscious but barely. They had done it. They had won. But as the first ships of the League fleet appeared on the horizon, their weapons powered down in confusion, Ash and Sabrina looked at each other, a shared, terrifying knowledge in their eyes. They now had a name for their true enemy. They had seen its face. And they knew, with chilling certainty, that this was only the beginning. They had not just stopped a natural disaster. They had declared war on a god of chaos. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.